Welcome to another edition of the Bible Forum. It is Sunday night, and this is the Sunday Night Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the last Sunday in March 2020. I have to write this stuff down. It's all going so fast. And there's just so many things that have happened in the last week, and I didn't really record all of the things that I wanted to, just a few of these things I want to share with you. One couple's experience, as it turned out. The symptoms began with a headache, followed by intense body aches and lethargy. They said beyond that, we had to deal with waves of chills, sweating, nausea. This is a pastor and his wife in a church where more than 24 church members have contracted the coronavirus. Now, there are no exact statistics from last year's flu season, at least not yet. However, the year before, from October 2018 to January 2019, resulted in between 10 and 11 million illnesses with 80,000 deaths. And that was just in the United States. This year, experts are estimating somewhere between 23 and 59,000 deaths. And that's before Corona spread on the scene. The point I'm trying to make here is that flu season is always a deadly time for many, many people in this country. But this is the first time that we have ever mobilized and advertised as though it were a military invasion. The point I'm making here is that much of what we are seeing, much of what we hear, is hype. I don't know how much of this is due to the enemies of President Trump trying to paint him as inept. I don't think those in China and Italy and around the world are doing that sort of thing. In China, citizens now require a green health code to travel. It's on their paperwork. If you have been placed under quarantine, the government will install a CCTV camera to point at your apartment door to make sure you don't leave. Israel has now given itself authority to surveil any citizen without a court warrant. Israel's security agency Shin Bet is using citizens' cell phone location data to track where they've been so they can enforce quarantine controls and monitor the movements of those who are infected. Poland is requiring those diagnosed with COVID-19 to self-isolate, to send authorities a selfie using an app to prove that they are home. If the Polish don't respond back in 20 minutes with a smiling face, they risk a visit from the police. Singapore has asked citizens to download an app which uses Bluetooth to track whether they've been near anyone diagnosed with the virus. And in Taiwan, although not using a smartphone, they have introduced electronic fences which alert police if suspected patients leave their homes. On balance, what we are hearing, what we are learning, is important. It'll save lives. But my question is, why now, and why not last year? And why not the year before? The answer comes back, this is a new virus, an unknown virus. But on balance, every new virus is an unknown virus until it strikes. And generally, each year, the virus is either new or a hybrid version of an old one, and therefore new. My point is that we are wisely being wary of this disease with the stay-at-home orders. Blue states more than red 15 blue states, as opposed to 6 red states, are ordering people to stay at home. Blue are liberals. The majority of states have no stay-at-home orders, but regardless, it is wise to be careful. Otherwise, we risk letting it get control of our minds and our emotions, not to mention our bodies. Because fear also kills. Currently, there are 3.3 million Americans out of work, about 3.5% as of February. Before the election of Donald Trump, the unemployment rate was higher than that. Of course, you have to add the unemployment rate to the current disease rate if you're going to be honest. And so we are at about 7% overall. However, a 3.5% unemployment rate is still the lowest in the last 50 years. At the end of 2009, the unemployment rate was 10%, and nobody was anticipating a social tsunami. But then we had a Democrat press. 3 years later, that rate dropped to 7%, and Obama was credited with being a miracle worker. The New York Times published a chart of variables you could adjust. It demonstrated that in order to approximate the average death rate for the last 2 years, 2018 to 2019, our society would have to be quarantined for 40 days. The rules in place would have required 80,000 deaths in 2018 and 25 to 50,000 estimated deaths in 2019 to quarantine the country for 40 days. And short of martial law, it's highly improbable that they could have done that. Currently, we're on track for 21 days and an estimated 60,000 plus or minus deaths. The critics are taking the idealistic view. Nothing in real life approaches ideal, but the difference here is you. One doctor wrote, when treating COVID-19 patients, I don't want to spend a moment longer in that room than I have to. Even with a mask firmly in place, even with a gown and eye protection, I do not want to share the same air. So I do what I need to do and then I leave. I don't take time to reassure, to explain, certainly not to hold a hand. The truth is, I'm frightened. The result here is that COVID-19 patients die alone. All of them. Bill Gates. You remember Bill Gates? Bill Gates told us about coronavirus in 2015. You can watch him doing it. It's on a TED Talk. You go to youtube.com to the TED Talks and you look for Bill Gates. You search the next outbreak. We're not ready. That's the title of it. The next outbreak. We're not ready. You can also check out geekwire.com. Search for Bill Gates warned us 2015. So what's in this coronavirus bill? More than 150 million households will receive a check in the mail sometime in the next 2 to 4 weeks. That's because Congress passed a coronavirus bill. They're going to send $1,200 to individual adult Americans plus $500 for each child, I think up to 2. People with incomes above $99,000 are not eligible, and the total benefit is phased out for people somewhere between $75,000 and $99,000. The bill includes almost $400 billion to help small businesses retain their payrolls. and $250 billion to boost unemployment insurance, offering $600 a week for 4 months if you were laid off from your job. And that's on top of whatever benefits the state you live in may be providing. Under something called the deal maker's deal maker, Mnuchin stepped in as Donald Trump's negotiator. But the president's doubt still lingers with an economy in crisis. We have a president who is a businessman, a very successful, high-powered businessman. We're starting to see some of the way he thinks. The new bill contains hundreds of billions of dollars in emergency federal aid for large corporations suffering due to the coronavirus outbreak, a provision that sparked days of intense partisan conflict and a frenzied push from lobbyists and corporations eager to secure a chunk of that funding. The final legislation, turns out, will provide $25 billion in grants and $25 billion in loans to passenger airlines, $17 billion in loans to industries deemed critical to what is called national security, a provision aimed at helping Boeing, and $425 billion in loans and loan guarantees to other large companies, a fund for which cities and states can also apply. President Trump touted the legislation in an interview on Thursday night this past week with Sean Hannity. He said the workers are going to get $3,000 for a family of 4. They're going to get all sorts of things that they, frankly, in many cases, wouldn't have even gotten if they had a job, if they didn't have to go through all of this. And it's a wonderful thing, he said. The kicker to all of this is that none of this is the government's job. The president declared this week regarding what is being called the bailout. They quote, a lot of this money is going to save Boeing, it's going to save the airline industry, and you know that means not only does it mean what it says, it also means tremendous jobs. We can't let Boeing go. You know, Boeing had a problem, big one to start off with, and on top of it, this happened, and we'll save Boeing, and we'll save the airlines, and we'll save other companies. Makes you wonder if he has Boeing stock. As the week unfolded, we got to hear from the House of Representatives and Nancy Pelosi. Pelosi, in talking to CNN in regard to the original House bill, said everything we're suggesting just relates to COVID-19. It's not changing policy except as it applies here. And then she proceeded to explain what was included in the Democrat bill. There's a bailout for the U.S. Postal Service. There are student loans and debt forgiveness built into this for students. There is a required same-day voter registration item. Airline emissions standards regulations, a study on climate change migration, collective bargaining provisions, increased federal minimum wage for companies that accept government loans, and the publication of race and pay statistics for corporate boards. That seems to be what the Democrats wanted. Turns out, apparently, they didn't get it. Can your government close your church? The simple answer is yes. Government restrictions on churches during the COVID-19 pandemic are almost certainly legal, provided they are temporary and do not target specific congregations. That according to a new memo by a leading defender of religious liberty. First Liberty Institute issued its guidance this week on something they're calling churches and religious institutions facing coronavirus restrictions on gathering. It asserted that churches should continue to serve their local communities, but do so while following government guidelines. Church and state have an opportunity to work together to reduce the impact of the virus on those communities while encouraging calm and preserving liberty, the memo says. Restrictions on churches are likely constitutional as long as they are temporary and they are applied even-handedly. Even-handedly means that other large gatherings fall under that same umbrella. At least 34 individuals who have connections to an Arkansas church have been diagnosed with COVID-19, and that number could climb higher as more testing is completed. Donald Shipp, a deacon at First Assembly of God in Greers Ferry, Arkansas, told the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette that all 34 of these people attended a Kids Crusade event March 6, 7, and 8. Among the infected are Pastor Mark Politcs and his wife Dina. It is noted that the event was held prior to the CDC's guidance to limit mass gatherings. Politcs wrote on Facebook, "It clearly made its way through a special weekend of children's ministries at our church. COVID-19," he added, "is highly contagious." Then there's Joe Biden. Joe Biden came out criticizing President Trump's handling of the coronavirus attack. That's not news, although it was touted as news. In any election cycle, those that are vying for the president's job will come out against anything he does, assuming he doesn't rescue a child from instant death. He says we need leadership that listens to science. We need leaders who listen to experts and heed their advice. We need American leadership that will rally the world to meet global threats. We need leaders who are honest. Slap against our president. That is the responsibility of a president. Well, this president has tapped Dr. Anthony Fauci to head up the scientific areas of this disease. In an interview with The Atlantic, Dr. Fauci was asked how Trump compared to past presidents with whom he has worked. "When I've said, I really think we should do this," Dr. Fauci commented, "he's never said no. And he has never overruled my recommendations," adding, quote, "when it comes to the core of what gets done, thankfully, he has listened to me." Fauci went on to say he has a very unique style. "But the thing that encourages me is that every time I've asked him to do something, cut out China travel, for instance, or go to the mitigation guidelines, he's always ultimately listened." Dr. Fauci's comments contradict accusations leveled by Democrat frontrunner Joe Biden, who has repeatedly implied that Trump ignores the opinions of scientists and of experts on this issue. According to Politico, Biden will hold briefings, quote, to show how he would handle the crisis and address what he calls the lies and the failures of President Trump. In response, the former vice president was excoriated for seemingly attempting to politicize a crucial part of the government's COVID-19 response. That's exactly what he was doing. Fox Business News announced this week that they were severing ties with host Trish Regan. Trish had been at the center of an online firestorm over commentary, calling the coronavirus pandemic a scam. What in the world did she do? What did she say? Well, Reagan says, quote, she was criticized online over a commentary she gave on her show March 9, a commentary that excoriated the Democrats for using the coronavirus emergency against President Trump. Her comment, quote, "The hate is boiling over. Many in the liberal media using, and I mean using, coronavirus in an attempt to demonize and destroy the president. End of quote. Anybody disagree with that? Reagan called it, quote, the coronavirus impeachment scam, end of quote, accusing Democrats of exaggerating the threat of the pandemic in order to damage Trump. The question is, what does all this mean? It means that Fox can't afford to alienate the left. Somebody tells the truth, but it's an inconvenient truth, they gotta go. Apparently they'll fire anybody who does it. Now keep in mind, Reagan did not imply that the disease is a scam. What she did say was simply the truth. Beware. I had a YouTube video removed of my own, and my account was frozen for a week because one person complained. That complaint was totally unfounded. I wrote to YouTube, I saved the video before it suddenly disappeared, and I explained to no avail. Can you say 1984? Some of you old timers know what I'm talking about. For you public school educated students, people who were educated after 1970, you understand 1984 is the title of a hugely popular book of the 1940s. If you've never heard of it, you probably need to read it. What the authors saw coming arrived not long after 1984. We're living it now. The Justice Department has quietly asked Congress for new emergency powers amid this crisis, including the power to ask Chief Justices to indefinitely detain people without trial. Can you say habeas corpus? Some of you younger folks probably don't know what that is. It's Latin. It means, where's the body? It's a key part of our legal code. Politico writes, in one of the documents, the department proposed that Congress grant the Attorney General power to ask the Chief Judge of any district court to pause court proceedings, quote, whenever the district court is fully or partially closed by virtue of any natural disaster, civil disobedience, or other emergency situation, end of quote. This is something now only individual judges can do. And as Politico noted, the proposal, which would essentially permit indefinite detention, would likely violate a person's right to appear before a judge in order to seek release after being arrested. That's a constitutional right, you know. It's known as habeas corpus. We can only wonder what's coming next. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court recently denied a request by gun rights advocates to exempt gun stores from an order that all non-essential businesses close during this coronavirus epidemic. Democrat Governor Tom Wolf issued the executive order on March 19. It forced the shutdown of all businesses in the state deemed not quite, quote, life-sustaining, end of quote, for an indefinite period of time, gun stores included. Now, Pennsylvania ranks 13 out of 50 states in terms of gun ownership. Pennsylvanians own 271,427 guns. They have a population of 12.8 million people. That's one gun for every 47 people. Texas has the most guns, 725,368. They have a population of 29.5 million. That's one gun for every 41 people. All but 11 states have over 39,000 guns. States with the least are the most liberal of our states: Hawaii, Vermont, Delaware, Rhode Island. They have between 4,600 and 8,000 guns. Our military has 4.5 million guns. Our police force has just over 1 million. Our citizens have just under 400 million. Only one nation in the world comes even close to us. That's China, with 49 million. Russia has 17 million. And most of these guns are unregistered. 392 million of them, meaning they are in the hands of citizens. And this is what keeps our government from going too far. It's not the documents posted in Washington. It's people living in the country. What do you suppose would happen if our government outlawed personal gun ownership? And who would collect them? How would they get them? As many have said, they'd have to pry them out of my cold, dead hands. And oh, the world is coming to an end. The headline, Gerald Celente, a top trends researcher, reporter, and publisher of the Trends Journal, says the world is already in an economic depression. Now, what all these attributions mean is that he's a reporter, not a financial expert. He has a website to advertise and an upcoming program to pitch, and he's trying to scare you to death. Here's what he had to say. Never in the history of the world has the whole world or most of the world been shut down by politicians destroying people's lives and their businesses. So, the threat is not real? My opinion is yes. No. Yes, we have a deadly disease on the loose, but no. We've been here before, almost every year. 2 years ago, 80,000 Americans died of the flu. Statistics on last year's season are still out, but the guess is 40,000. And guess what? Neither one of those years were there any headlines, no shutdowns. Today, people are going to go bankrupt. Our leaders are totally closing down the economy. And again, this has never been done before. My comment, how? Where? Well, that's right. Businesses are closing for 2, maybe 3 weeks. But this man writes people are going to go bankrupt. Leaders are totally closing down the economy. Not true. He says this will impact every American in the country who doesn't have a brain or is living on the edge. So why are they living on the edge? The liberal says because they can't help it. Reality says because they have come to expect someone to take care of them regardless of how they live. That's a definition of insanity. The next play by global governments will be to get rid of cash because it carries germs. Germs like the coronavirus. Celente writes, we are going to go from dirty cash to digital trash, which is also the title of a current trends journal, meaning all this is advertising. He says the debt levels are phenomenal, and of course they are. We have more than $250 trillion of global debt, plus all the personal debt. They've got people freaked out. They're going to give us digital trash. They're going to get rid of the currencies you have. Gold prices bounced back $200 per ounce last Friday. I think this must be an old publication. I checked the gold price March 26. It was currently then $1,597 an ounce. Last month, it was trading for about 1/10 or 100th of that. In closing, Celente says, I agree with Trump 100% because I've been saying this since the beginning, that the cure is going to be worse than a disease. They're destroying the global economy. They're destroying people's lives. We're all going to see crime levels that are unimaginable. Why do you think people are going out and getting guns? Are they? Yeah, some are. Gun dealers are doing a booming business. He says, then you're going to see those liberals talking about gun confiscation. Liberals have been talking about gun confiscation as long as I've been on the planet. The man has a prophecy. He says crime is going to escalate, deaths are going to go through the roof. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it emotionally. You're going to see gangs like never before. Probably. But that's what always happens when drastic changes occur. On the other end, the open borders issue is a closed story, he says. They're closing borders all over the world. So you're not going to hear people say, let them in. He said, that's over. On Trump winning a second term this November, Celente, who calls himself a political atheist, says it's a wild card, but I would still go with Trump at this point. And here's the pitch. Join Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com as he goes one-on-one with Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal, as he gives his top trends and predictions of the virus crisis, the Greatest Depression, gold and silver prices, and his pick to win the White House in November. It's all hype. It's all pitch. Some prophecy mixed in. When you're surfing the web, be careful. And then there's God. A cloud in Argentina formed what appeared to be a person in colorful robes, such as would be seen in movies and artwork. And they saw this in the clouds, in the sky. It was standing above a large cloud, and people began to see the Virgin Mary standing above the cloud. Susie Jimenez claims she saw the figure as the Virgin Mary and said it was a miracle, writing, quote, thanks, Mother, for protecting us, for interceding for God, and for your mercy for the people. It's being called a miracle. Reports state the figure was also seen from the nearby town of Candelaria, San Carlos, said to be one of the oldest Jesuit towns in the province. Nancy Cervantes Saez commented, there are a lot of stories. I do know we are very sensitive. Aren't we asking for a bit of hope? It comes at the same time the coronavirus pandemic deepens across South America and the beginning of a lockdown across Argentina. Times of pressure bring out all kinds of foolishness. Bring out all kinds of opportunities to invest your money. They also bring out in the emotional people in this world these kinds of things, these kinds of representations and comments. People are looking for comfort. It's sad, in my view, that they take comfort in what is clearly a deception. Mary was not there. We'll be right back. We've got a lot more to talk about tonight. Stay tuned.